Chapter 31. Now the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled from before the Philistines, and fell down slain in Mount Gilboa. And the Philistines followed hard upon Saul and upon his sons, and the Philistines slew Jonathan, and Abinadab, and Malchishua, and the sons of Saul. And the battle went sore against Saul, and the archers overtook him, and he was in great anguish by reason of the archers. Then said Saul to his armor-bearer, Draw your sword, and thrust me through therewith, lest these uncircumcised come, and thrust me through, and make a mock of me. But his armor-bearer would not, for he was sore afraid. Therefore Saul took his sword, and fell upon it. And when his armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he likewise fell upon his sword, and died with him. So Saul died, and his 3 sons, and his armor-bearer, and all his men, that same day together. And when the men of Israel that were on the other side of the valley, and they that were beyond the Jordan, saw that the men of Israel fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they forsook the cities, and fled, and the Philistines came and dwelt in them. And it came to pass on the morrow, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, that they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen in Mount Gilboa. And they cut off his head, and they stripped off his armor, and sent into the land of the Philistines round about to carry the tidings unto the house of their idols and to the people. And they put his armor in the house of the Ashtaroth, and they fastened his body to the wall of Bethshan. And when the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead heard concerning him that which the Philistines had done to Saul, all the valiant men arose, and went all night, and took the body of Saul, and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Bethshan. And they came to Jabesh, and burnt them there. And they took their bodies, and buried them, and they took their bones, and buried them under the tamarisk tree in Jabesh, and fasted 7 days. Okay, let's go back to verse 1. Now, we've come down to finally to the battle where the Philistines, after David, little escapade yesterday, and Saul and the Philistines are fighting. And verse 1, Now the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled from before the Philistines, and they fell down slain in Mount Gilboa. Now, the Philistines are whipping Israel, just like God said he was going to deliver Israel up to the Philistines and Saul. And we'll see that they fell down slain by the hand of these drifters in Mount Gilboa. And I've said Gilboa means these rolling questions. But that rolling is like from boiling, when you boil water. And when you boil water, it appears that the water's rolling. And you can see that it kind of lifts up off the surface of the water to form a little mound. And that's exactly what this is. It's more like a mound of boiling questions. 2, And the Philistines followed hard upon Saul and upon his sons, and the Philistines slew Jonathan and Abinadab and Malchishua, the sons of Saul. So now the Philistines are pressing hard on Israel and upon Saul and his army, and they slew the sons of Saul here. They slew Jonathan, whom God has given, and Abinadab. Father makes willingly Malchishua the king's cry. So God has willingly made the king's cry here, and to show you his mercy. And the battle went sore against Saul, and the archers overtook him, and he was in great anguish by reason of the archers. Verse 3. So the archers, these who carry the bow, and this bow represents God's word, and these arrows are the truths they're going out of it. These are the soldiers, and this would be the weapons they would carry in the spiritual understanding. So they're shooting these arrows at Saul, and Saul is in great anguish by the reason of the archers, because they are dropping the arrows on him. 4, Then said Saul to his armor-bearer, Draw your sword, and thrust me through therewith, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through, and make a mock of me. But his armor-bearer would not, for he was sore afraid. Therefore Saul took his sword and fell upon it. So this armor-bearer of Saul's, and Saul's asked him to pull out his sword and kill me, he says, unless these uncircumcised, these that don't even have understanding of the law, come and make a mockery of me. Why? Because the truth's coming out, and they're pouring it out on Saul, and Saul is in great anguish because of this. He's asked his armor-bearer to kill him, but his armor-bearer's scared, put his hand against the king. I'm going to find here, Saul takes his own sword, and he falls on it. And this is an example, and the prophecies of the end, how this desired one shall fall upon his own sword, his own understanding shall he fall upon. And when his armor-bearer saw, verse 5, that Saul was dead, he likewise fell upon his sword and died with him. And this armor-bearer represents the one who went around with Saul and carried those things that protected Saul, carried his armor, carried his weapons of war, or his weapons of deception even. 6. So Saul died, and his 3 sons, and his armor-bearer, and all his men, that same day together. So in this battle, as God said he was going to deliver Saul and the whole house of Israel up, and we find that that's exactly what he did. And all Saul and his men and his sons, they all died together. We'll notice here these 3 sons, because it's complete. God has completed his judgments. And when the men of Israel that were on the other side of the valley, and they that were beyond the Jordan, saw that the men of Israel had fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they forsook the cities and fled, and the Philistines came and dwelt in them. So now, when all these men of Israel, and I'm going to add that these are the Israelites that are on the east of the Jordan, not in the promised land on the west. These would be over there where the 2.5 tribes were in the land of Gilead in Yabesh. This is where all this is going down. And we'll notice here, these Jordan means these waters that descend, and they represent the real truth of God. And when the men on the other side of these truths saw these things, and that Israel was running, and Saul and his sons were dead, they all just left their cities, and the Philistines came and took over. 8. And it came to pass on the morrow, or the next day, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, that they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen in Mount Gilboa. So the next day, after the battle's over, here come the Philistines, these drifters, to strip the slain, or to take what the dead have. And they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen, they're dead, in Mount Gilboa, in this place, this heap of boiling questions. And they cut off his head, and they stripped off his armor, and they sent into the land of the Philistines round about, to carry the tidings unto the house of their idols and to the people. Verse 9. So we're going to find that they've cut Saul's head off, they've took his armor, that what used to protect him, and his head being his understanding, and they've sent it through all the land of these Philistines to show that this great king has fallen, and even unto the house of their idols and to the people is where all this news would go. And they put 10 his armor in the house of the Ashtaroth, and they fastened his body on the wall of Beth-shan. And Beth-shan is the house of ease. They think they've got it easy. They think they've got it made. And this house of the Ashtaroth is the best Ashtar. They know this is the house of their idol, and Ashtar being the goddess of fertility. And today we would simply call it Easter leaven. And when the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead heard concerning him that which the Philistines had done to Saul, 12, all the valiant men arose and went all night, and took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Bethshan. And they came to Jabesh and burnt them there. So now the men, these inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead, and Gilead is that place, this heap of stones that witness. These were the stones that set up by Jacob between him and Laban. And Jabesh is this dry place, the dry place where God has caused it to be dry. He's not sending no word. He's not sending no understanding. This place has been dry, this heap of stones that witness. And these valiant men, they've come and they've took Saul's body down off the wall there in Bethshan, this house of ease, and they brought it to Jabesh, unto this dry place, and they burned it there. 13, and they took their bones and buried them under the tamarisk tree in Jabesh, and they fasted for 7 days. So, now, after they burnt Saul's body and his sons, they have took their bones, and they buried them under the tamarisk tree. This tamarisk tree is that which shades in the dry place. And they fasted for 7 days. And this is perfection. This day's light. God has perfected his light, perfected his work, perfected his understanding. And Saul has come to his end. And this is the end of this prophecy. Now, Saul is the example of what's going to happen. And we will watch what happens to the king, his sons, as we go on through, because God's going to pull it out. He's going to use, though, this king to bring great judgments. This is the purpose of the kings, to bring judgment upon those who have strayed from God, the only king you ever need. And they've made themselves other kings to rule over them. And now we're going to find out that God has prophesied the end of you and your king, as he did in the book of Deuteronomy. And he has brought you into other lands, and he has scattered you all through the earth, and he has caused you to fall down unto idolatry. You have forgotten the Lord your God, and all this evil he has brought upon you by the way of your king. God asks you and begs you, now put these things away. Turn and return unto God, his law that he gave you. And this is all you will ever receive by his hand until you put this away. All right, we're going to move on to 2 Samuel now, in chapter 1.